Some people think that the right thing to do is to treat everybody alike because that's the fair thing to do. I compliment you and I yell at her. That's not fair. Why do you do that? So I think in the early season practice situations and stuff, you can start developing that for them to understand that the fair part is I'm trying to help you all individually.
At the field, in your car, or on the couch, get your fast pitch info from the coach's mouth.
Welcome to the From the Coach's Mouth podcast with your hosts, Jay Bolden and Ken Kraus. Hello, everyone, and welcome once again to the From the Coach's Mouth podcast. This is Ken. Here, as always, with Mr. Jay Bolden. Jay, sorry I don't have any fancy intros for you today.
Oh, that's okay, Ken. My wife gave me a bunch of compliments this morning, so she made up for it. But so no worries for you, buddy.
Oh, good.
I appreciate. Yeah, she took care of the compliments today, so it's a good day. But I do appreciate all the ones you've given me over time. But I want to ask you a couple things. How are your lessons going with your kids? Are you starting to see more kids now that high school is kind of winding down a little bit?
Well, it's been interesting because still not seeing too many of the high schoolers. Some of them are able to get in. They get in when they can. Sometimes they get the last minute request, and sometimes they get the last minute cancellation when all of a sudden a game was rescheduled. But I've also, it's the start of the travel ball season. And of course, a few people are starting to go, oh, maybe we should look into this and try to get a little bit better. So it's been interesting. It's, a little up and down. The only thing that worries me is I've taken in a few kids, and then what happens when all my high schoolers come back, or presumably come back? I think I'll be working awfully hard this summer.
Yeah, that's a good thing. I actually like this time of year because it slows down a little bit for me, and then I can actually get out and see kids do their thing. So been to a couple high school games here recently. This past weekend, there was a finesse tournament, PGF finesse tournament down at Crown Point, and it was like 14s and under. So I got out there, saw a few of my kids throw a little bit. There's one this weekend out here. I think the Bandits are hosting one here in Crown Point, so I'm going to get out there this weekend to go see some of my kids throw in the circle. And I love that because it gives me some in-game looks as to how things are transitioning from lessons onto the field. And it's really cool. The kids love it when you get out there and support them. I don't get a lot of opportunities to do that, but I do like to get out when I can to go out there and show them support even outside of the lessons. So it's exciting. I'm excited to get out there this weekend.
Yes, same here. I've been able to get out to a few high school games, and it's been fun. I've seen a couple of kids that I've given lessons to for, 5, 6, 7 years. It was the first time I ever got to see them play live, just because I'm usually, in doing lessons at the time they're playing. I had one girl, we had a lesson the night before, worked on her rise ball. She's been pitching an awful lot. So I said, we are not going to throw any full pitches here. We're just going to spin rise balls all day. And then I got to see her out the next day in the cold and the rain, and that rise ball was just killing it.
Nice.
Saw the movement there, or the apparent movement, and it was just fun to watch.
And I think that's important, Ken. That's, you bring up a great point there. And I think for you and I, it's really about the connections we make with the kids and the families, right? And so going out there and being able to show support to those kids outside of lessons and the families, right? When I go there, I'm usually sitting with the dads and the moms, talking to them about what it is and stuff like that. And I think that gives that extra incentive for us to make connections with the families, not just the players themselves.
Yep. And it was nice because on that particular team, I have actually 3 girls that I work with. So I saw one of them pitch. Another one didn't get to pitch, but I did, see her and her sister hit. So it was just a lot of fun. I was talking to one of the moms, throughout the thing. We were both huddled in underneath the eave of the concession stand, watching the game from right behind the plate. It was a lot of fun to do that. Hey, before we go on, I just want to real quickly congratulate you guys, St. Xavier Conference champions once again. Congratulations.
Thank you. It's a 6th year in a row, so that's huge for us. We should have this will be our 3rd year, I believe, that we'll have the pitcher of the year. And I also have a first team all conference pitcher as well. So our 1 and 1A is really good. And even our 2s and 3s are actually really good. And like you saw my post, my biggest thing, Ken, is that every one of those kids gets better, not just my number one.
They must have a hell of a pitching coach.
I think so, but you know what? You'll have to ask my head coach. I'm not so sure about that. But thanks for that. So you and I can go on forever here, but I do want to, since we were talking a little bit about connections and families, before we introduce this guest, I do want to say thank you to Katie Campbell, who has helped us get in contact with this amazing guest. So Katie and Chris, thank you guys so much for putting us in contact. But Ken, I don't want to give away who this is, so I'm going to have you give people some information about this amazing guest we have on today's podcast.
All righty. Well, we're thrilled to speak with our guest today because she's not only a member of several halls of fame as a coach, but she earned those honors while leading the fast pitch softball program at my alma mater, Northern Illinois University. Go Huskies. The Wilmette, Illinois native was actually a swimmer at Western Michigan University, where she earned both her bachelor's and master's degrees. While there, she got her start in coaching as a graduate assistant before moving to Lincoln Trail Community College, where she not only won 152 games as a softball coach, she also founded the entire women's athletic program. She then took the job as head coach at NIU. During her 15-year tenure, the Huskies compiled a record of 416 wins against 286 losses and 5 ties, making her the winningest coach in NIU softball history. Her teams won 30 or more games in 7 different seasons, including a 40-win season in 1993. She also led the Huskies to their only appearance in the Women's College World Series in 1988, where they reached as high as 10th in the national poll. She was named Conference Coach of the Year 3 times during her tenure. After the 1994 season, our guest then left coaching to embark on a 17-year career in athletics administration at NIU at a time when women's collegiate sports were just starting to take off in popularity. She started as an assistant athletic director, then rose to positions as senior associate athletic director and senior women administrator for NIU, ultimately overseeing 12 sports. She also directed the internal affairs units of the school's athletic department and oversaw its transition back to the Mid-American Conference. Her passion for softball never waned, however. In 1996, our guest became the NCAA softball secretary rules editor, a position she held until 2015, and was the co-author of the original NCAA softball rulebook. She later became a liaison to the National Fast Pitch Coaches Association and Amateur Softball Association, now USA Softball, and served as vice chair of the Rules Committee and the Equipment Testing and Standards Committee for USA Softball for 12 years. All of this work earned her multiple awards and distinctions, including being inducted into the NIU Hall of Fame, the MAC Hall of Fame, and in 2019, the NFCA Hall of Fame. She also received the NFCA Distinguished Service Award for her lifetime dedication to the sport of fast pitch, only the second person in a 24-year period to receive this award. But enough background, Jay. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome the amazing Dee Abrahamson to the From the Coach's Mouth podcast.
Welcome, Coach.
Wow, that's amazing. You guys really did your homework and found some facts I don't really think about very often.
Yeah.
It's important for us to let people know that the people that we're talking to are great people to begin with, 1, and 2, that have been around and seen it and done it. So, your accomplishments speak for themselves. I mean, that's why we're super excited to dig in with you today and get into some of these things. So welcome again, Coach. We're happy to have you.
Yes, for sure.
Thanks.
We're going to start it out just kind of how we start this whole thing out with everybody. We'd love to get an idea. Give us a little background on your softball journey, both as a player, if you can, and then as a coach. Just how did it all start for you?
Well, it's kind of an interesting story because I never played the sport. I admit to, at the time, being a Cub fan and still am an avid Cub fan.
Yay.
So I understand baseball a little bit, but I never had the chance to play softball or baseball. Actually, when I was a kid, I grew up, I was a swimmer. So I had my head in the water most of the time and learned a lot about practice and hard work that way, but not so much about having my feet on the ground. So my swimming background actually landed me my first job out of college at Lincoln Trail Community College downstate. They had built a pool and were in desperate need of making it work. The pool was empty most of the time. People didn't come by and use it. So they hired me with their goal of having me find a way to program the heck out of it. We had infant swim, we had senior citizen exercise, we had teaching swimming lessons, we had diving lessons. We started competitive swimming, although, to have that at the college level, you can't just jump in and take a bunch of 17-year-olds and say, okay, now you're going to swim in college. But that was going to take some time, but they were willing to wait. And so that was really my goal, was to come in there and help them do that and then teach in the physical education department at halftime. So when I got there, fall was great. I learned a lot about rural Illinois that I didn't know before. And I went through my fall semester, got maybe halfway through it, and a bunch of girls in my class came to me and said, we need some help. And I said, well, I thought we were talking about class. Like I said something stupid and they didn't understand it or whatever. And it's like, no, we need some help. You know what? The boys who go to school here have athletic teams. And actually, they were pretty good athletic teams. But there's nothing for us. And we want, since you're female and we're female, we want you to start a program.
Wow.
And I was like, okay, well, I intend to do that, because I'm thinking swimming now. I intend to do that, but it's going to take us a while. But yes, we're going to have a co-ed swim team here, and you're going to have opportunities. Like, no, that's not what we mean. We want to play now. And it's like, okay, what are you good at? And every one of them, softball. That's what they do at the time, and probably still now in rural communities, that's what they do, is they play softball. And they said, and we're really good at it. And it's like, okay, well, then that's what we'll do. And so I went to the President Pylan, and told him, I have this interest. What's it going to take financially to be able to do it? And they were willing to pitch in for balls and a uniform for us. We played at a city park, so we didn't have to worry about that. The players had their own bats, didn't have to worry about that. So that very first spring I was there, we played softball. And they played because they were talented, because they were committed to it. They understood the game. And I just tried to stay out of their way and learn as much as I could, as fast as I could. I was pretty good at learning how to drag a field, so I could do that. I could drive a van pretty well without their help. But pretty much everything else they needed to help with, to teach me how to teach them to play. So that's what started their athletic program. And actually, it is 50 years ago this year. This spring, we had a reunion. And a lot of those first-time players came back, and some of them brought their kids and their grandchildren. So that was very, very cool.
And you were looking at them saying, man, all you guys got old.
No, because remember, I'm older, so I don't play that card with them. So
that's what I do.
It was really their desire to play, their abilities that they had learned from all of those probably dads in their summer programs for the most part. And it's not like they watched it on TV or anything and learned how to play. They learned the hard way. And so they taught me fast enough, well enough so that we could be pretty good. And at the end of the spring season, they're like, well, okay, that was great, but we want to do something year round. So how about we start a volleyball team and a basketball team too, and we'll play. And I said, well, are you any good at it? And they said, well, not as good, but we'll be okay. So again, the president was great. We were able to actually wear the same jersey shirt for volleyball, basketball, and softball. So we just had to come up with shorts to add two teams, So, and we already had the gym, and balls were around. So, it was pretty easy. And so they were the school was amazing. I still to this day, for somebody to come in and say, hey, I want to change things up this much, this fast. They were great about making it happen. We were okay in volleyball. We were less than okay in basketball, because I kind of struggled with that. But we were good in softball. And our second year, we took third in the state. That's how good my players were.
Nice.
And I just, like I said, I just tried to keep up, tried to learn as much as I could, and fell in love with the sport as a coach. And so after 4 years, I left there to take a different opportunity at Ken's alma mater in Northern Illinois, to come up there and be the softball coach and teach halftime and see where that took me. It brought me a little closer to home, gave me a little bit more chance to focus on something, because I really felt after 4 years, I had, maybe the president sees it this way, I'm sure, is kind of created a monster. It's like, okay, well, we could do this and we can play 10 games and everybody's happy. And we can play 15 games, everybody's happy. Now everybody wants to play 20, and it's like, well, Dee doesn't know enough to be able to do that, to take them on. And I just felt like I needed to cut back. I felt confident about my teaching and my desire to do well at that. But boy, coaching 3 sports and trying to learn was just too much I just didn't think I was going to be able to do a good job at all of them or any of them. So the opportunity came up at Northern to be the head softball coach. So I took advantage of it and moved north. So that's how my softball journey started, with meeting some phenomenal women who just wanted their fair chance.
Well,
Have sport.
Yeah, there's a couple of things in there. I think one of them, we've had enough people that have come in. They talk about the way the modern game is structured, and how everything is so pre-programmed, and the coaches control so much, and the kids don't know how to think and how to react to what's going on in the field anymore. It was kind of the ideal situation, I think, for players there, where they had someone that could kind of manage the adult stuff, making sure that there was a van to get them to the games, making sure the field was dragged, but the players got to play. And then, I think the other thing is you must have had an amazingly progressive president, because I grew up in that same era and women's sports were not really much thought of. I don't think they were disparaged. They were just thought of as kind of like, in the way. Hey, you guys want to go play? Yeah, go ahead and go play. But it wasn't really encouraged or promoted like it is now. So for someone to say, yeah, go ahead and start these programs and do all of that stuff, and here's as much support as we can give you, is pretty amazing.
Yeah, it was. And, I look back at adding softball. There was, the initial little startup costs and stuff. And of course, you got to pay for umpires. There's that too. So it is a financial commitment. I think he was really happy with that. I don't know. I never really went back and talked to him or to the athletic director, P.D. Highsmith, at the time, about how they felt after the fact. Like, looking back, it's like, because as soon as we moved to volleyball and basketball, now we're talking about taking gym space away from the men's teams. It's like, okay, well, the men used to be able to practice basketball whenever they wanted to, because the gym was open to them all afternoon long. We used it a lot for recreation at night and stuff. But hey, if you want to practice at 1 or 3, no problem. Well, now all of a sudden, these softball women want a time. And it's like, okay, so now it's not just whenever you want to go. It's like, okay, no. And I want to run practice a little longer because we got this extra thing to work on. No, the women are waiting.
Yeah.
So they had to get out.
Yep.
So it'll be interesting to know what they thought of it. It's like, was that really a good idea, what we did? To do 3 sports all inside of 12 months. Actually, they added 3 sports inside of 12 months, with softball being first and then the next fall. So I just would wonder what they think of. Did we make a mistake? But the good news is all those teams are thriving down there. They still have them and participation, like I said, 50 years later. So, so I feel really good about hoping that they feel good about it too.
Awesome.
You built NIU into a nationally relevant program and reached the Women's College World Series, which honestly I wasn't aware of. I didn't know that Northern had ever been there, so that was kind of a revelation to me. So what were the foundational pillars of that success?
Well, actually, NIU had a really successful beginning to softball. Coach Mary Bell started the program in 1959, so one of the first ones around. I mean, if you think about where women's sports were in general in 1959.
Yeah,
she was very progressive.
That was the milk, the juice and cookies era. Where at my high school,
yes, we did do that.
Yeah, at my high school, after the games were over, they'd get out both teams together and they'd have juice and cookies.
That is exactly true, and it was true here too. That we would have early on, they would have what they called play days, and there'd be 3 or 4 teams, and they would play field hockey. Mary Bell coached field hockey and softball, and she took that tradition from her field hockey to softball. Of you would get together on the field and talk about just stuff, as amazing time. But anyway, she was incredibly successful. She won like almost 70% of her games over her 15 years in the program. I mean, she really set us off on a good venture. Then right after her, there were two coaches between them. They were there for maybe 5 years. Again, winning more than 50% of their games. So it wasn't like I had to come in and start from scratch. I was inheriting some really good success tradition from the people who got there before me. I inherited that tradition, that expectation from those people. That was great. My initial goal was, to just kind of expand the competitive opportunities as opposed to overhaul the program. We're just looking at more games, better competition. We accepted invitations to 3 national invitational championships tournaments. So that was really good for the growth of our program and stuff. And then, and then you get into conferences and you learn to win conference tournaments, and then you learn how to progress. So in 1988, we were selected in the original field. We won our regional championship and went to the final 8, which was in California, which is a whole different culture than most of us were used to. So that was a great learning experience about how that happens, how things happen at that level and stuff. Had a great time, although our 2 opponents, it's double elimination. Our 2 opponents were the defending national champion and then the eventual champion. So we lost some 1-run games and got sent home with 2 losses, but what a great experience for us, and played really well, just weren't up to the task. I thought the next year, I thought our 1989 team was actually probably better suited to go pretty far. But when you live in a world of conference championships, and we weren't in a conference, so we didn't have that opportunity to win the conference championship. So now you're looking at getting an at-large bid. It's up to hard decisions of the people in that room, and we didn't get a favorable decision, so we didn't get to go. But I think that team was maybe a little better suited, and we'd had that experience in '88 of, what it's like to play in front of a packed stadium, to be on radio. There was no TV on. But radio was a big deal for us. People could listen to us, and listen to the game stuff. So there was, just a lot of distractions to playing. And I thought that the '88 team handled it really well and learned. And then we tried to pass that along to the teams that came after. And we just never got the chance to get back to that venue. But certainly lots of opportunities to do well in our conferences, the various conferences we've been in, and the conference tournaments, and advance as far as we can.
So I want to ask you, Dee, real quick, if you can. You talk about that '88 team going to the Women's College World Series, and then you talked about the '89 team that you thought was prepared probably more than the '88 team. In your opinion, and over your many years of coaching, what do you think separates programs that sustain success from those that just have that one good year?
I think the on the field things, you guys teach pitching, so more than anybody else. Pitching from a pitching rubber is the same all the time. So, it's the physical mechanics of how you do that is the same in practice and in a game. And so after that, it's all the atmosphere, the mental stimulation, the ability to not get distracted by other things. I think the environment matters, the culture. I think feeling supported matters, especially to women. Maybe that's a sexist thing. Maybe it is to men too, but I know it is to women, to be able to, if I'm pitching, I know my defense has got my back. When I'm up to the plate, my job is to get on base, and then their job is to make me run and get me home. I think if you instill that, then it's easier to replicate that year after year and be competitive. And then sometimes it works out for you, and you get to conference championships or national recognition or whatever, and sometimes you don't. Certainly having, key players. We had most of our team were regional, Northern Illinois. That's what recruiting was at that time, was mostly that way. So we had some really good student athletes on the national level. I don't know. We've had maybe 5 I've had maybe 5 who've gone on to play professional softball. Jill Justin was a local talent, certainly on the national scene. She would have been in the Olympics if there had been Olympic softball in her era, because she did represent the U.S. on the national team. Beth Schrader, these are their names, not their married names, but names people might know them by when they played around here. Beth Schrader was an amazing pitcher who helped us out. Julie Sexton, amazing catcher. Lori Reamer played shortstop for us. So we had some people who had gained a lot of experience in their youth, played high school, came out here and played for us, and then were able to play on. And without that, we probably never have made, the opportunities for everybody else. So if you get those key players and then everybody else supports the heck out of them, then you get a chance to advance as a team.
You mentioned about pitching, and what constituted an elite pitcher in your era when you were coaching?
I think it's still the same idea of just the competitive attitude, the willingness to work really hard at a craft and achieve success with it. Because pitching is different. Not that the other players don't work hard, because they surely do. They field ground balls and fly balls, and they throw and they do all those kinds of things. But there are not very many elite pitchers who don't also take lessons or have specific pitching practices in addition to their regular team practices. So they kind of have a little bit more invested in terms of their time and mental stimulation to be successful, to contribute to the team's success. So I think that competitive attitude of I need to do more, I need to do a lot, I need drive to be successful at this job, because if I do my job really well, then the defense has a much better opportunity for us to be successful in the game. So, I think that's a big part of it, is to be elite. You just really have to be willing to put in that extra time above and beyond the other players, because your part of the game requires it.
Yeah.
And their skills are a lot different. When you become a hitter, there are certain skills that you're good at, stuff. When you become a pitcher, it seems like we're always developing. Okay, yeah, you got your fastball. Okay, now let's start from scratch and learn a changeup. Okay, now let's start from scratch and let's work on this drop ball or this rise ball or whatever it is. So they kind of have that turnover of different adding skills and not abandoning the ones they have, because you still don't need to be able to throw your fastball where you want it to be.
Yeah, and one of the things too with pitchers, I think sometimes, especially defense makes a mistake, or there's a drop third strike, or things just aren't going well behind them. Do you find that pitchers will tend to try to take on too much? Then they're like, okay, well, I guess I just have to do this myself.
Yeah, don't we all do that, right?
Yeah.
That's kind of what you do, because you try to pick up the slack, whatever that is, in the job that you're doing. And sometimes that works out really well because that motivates you and you do. Sometimes it actually is detrimental because you're now trying to do too much. Instead of thinking about the spin I want on this rise ball, I'm thinking about, well, my catcher better catch this one, or please don't hit it to the left fielder because she's not having a day, or, and then you lose the focus on your own part that you used to have.
Yeah, the process part.
Yeah. So that it is kind of an interesting conundrum, because it works in your favor and it works to your detriment.
So if a pitcher was having trouble, what if you did a mound visit or a circle visit, what would you say?
You know what? That really, for me, depended on the pitcher. And maybe that comes from my own lack of experience, that what I needed to do was to learn from them, and try and figure out in a practice situation, when I've asked them to do something and it's not working well, then I try to stop and go talk to them and then try to figure out, okay, that was not productive. What I just said was not productive. So if it happens in a game, D, do not do that again. Okay, so what's a better approach for that player? And of course, we all have different days, our personalities, you have a good day, a bad day. But if you try to learn a little bit about what helps them, do I need to give her more information? Some of my best pitchers, what I needed to do was to make them laugh.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Okay, let's just take a second here, get out of, the tenseness of this situation or your desire to be successful, which if you concentrate on your desire to be successful, sometimes you don't do the steps to be successful. So it's like, we'll just go out to the mound and say something else, like, I see our bus driver sitting in the stands over there, and I sure hope he's sleeping because we're going to have a long ride home tonight, or something. And they'll do exactly that. They'll laugh. It's like, if we're going to keep him out all night, you guys, I hope he's doing that. So maybe we could help him out a little bit here by finishing this game off. And then let's go back to focus. Okay, everybody, any questions about what we're going to do, how we want to handle this better? Okay, let's do it. And then walk away.
I love that. I think that's a brilliant way to approach it. Jay and I talk about that a lot, is that, just handling individuals with what they need. I think a lot of young coaches need to hear that, is that you can't assume they're like you and they need what you need. You have to learn your individuals and learn how to speak to them in a way that makes sense to them.
Yeah, I'll say this, Ken, too. Like, when I go out to the circle, if we're in a moment where it's tense and we're struggling, the last thing I tell them to do is, hey, just throw strikes. Yeah. Right? Like, you hear that from the bleachers every week. Just throw strikes. It's like, what do you think she's trying to do, bro? Like, we're not there yet. You know what I mean? Like, so I go out there and I just say, hey, we just need to get, we need to detach from this moment, take a breath, and let's focus on some things that we want to do. Our posture's got to get a little better, or something of that nature. Or I'll tell a joke like, Dee, I think that's great. Like, you got to break the ice there a little bit because everybody's feeling all that tension. So, but the last thing I tell them is, we just got to throw strikes. Like, that's the last thing. So, but Dee,
I think one of the things that I had to learn early too was to tell my pitching staff in particular, but kind of set the mood with all of the players, is that some people think that the right thing to do is to treat everybody alike, because that's the fair thing to do. I compliment you and I yell at her. That's not fair. Why do you do that? So I think in the early season practice situations and stuff, you can start developing that for them to understand that the fair part is, I'm trying to help you all individually. What you may think is not fair is that I don't treat you all alike, because that's not what you each need. Maybe is the same thing. So, because I think sometimes when you don't help them understand that, they think you play favorites. Well, when you go out to the mound, you always tell me this. And when you go out to the mound, you guys walk away laughing. Like, that's not fair. Mm-hmm. It's like, well, I'm not, it's just, it's a very sandy floored thing, because it kind of sinks underneath your feet, and then sometimes not so much. But for them to understand that what I'm trying to do is to treat you all alike, which is to be as helpful as I can to you. That's the alike part. The processes might be different for one to another, and that's not because I like her better, or I don't like your parents, or your parents give more money than their parents, or any of that other distraction stuff. It's that, I'm just trying to find a way to be helpful to you. And if that's not working, then tell me and I'll try to find a different way.
Well, and I think too, there's an element for coaches is we have a tendency to coach players the way we want to be coached, or the way we were used to being coached. And that maturity level comes in, and I had to learn that, certainly. This player doesn't need the same thing as that one. I wouldn't like to be yelled at, but maybe this kid needs you to give him a hard time. And this kid needs a laugh, or she needs sarcasm or something. Some girls, you make them mad and they're going to perform at a very, very high level. It just kicks them in an extra gear. And I don't think it's just girls either. I think boys are the same way.
Mm-hmm. Right. Yeah. So
we probably all are, even as adults, the same. Yeah. You just try to find out what is helpful to help them perform at whatever it is that you want them to do, and then try to provide that when you can. And then sometimes you just can't help yourself because you just go off the rails. It's like, I'm just so angry, I know I'm going to say the wrong thing. So I'm just not even going to go out there.
Yeah, you're just out there going, are you trying to kill me here? Is that the goal?
Yeah, exactly.
I say all the time, sometimes it's better to say nothing, especially with my youngest daughter. Like, when plays happen and they don't go good, sometimes I don't even say a word. It's better not to say anything, and just she'll pick herself up and she'll keep going. Blue, timeout.
Hey, Jay, on a scale of 1 to 10, how important do you think brush contact is for pitchers?
It's pretty high up there, Ken. Probably a 10, since it's hard to get maximum speed or accuracy without it.
Yeah, I agree. But have you ever had a student who struggled to get good light brush contact?
Sure, all the time, in fact, especially when they've been taught hello elbow and are trying to throw around their hips, or they're sliding their hips out of the way doing that crazy ninja move.
So what do you do when you run into that situation? Keep railing on them until they get it right?
I used to do that a lot, but then I learned about a product called Pitch Squeak, Ken.
Pitch Squeak? What's that?
It's a cool little armband with a squeaker inside of it.
Like a dog toy?
Yeah, kinda.
So how does it work?
Well, you slip the armband onto the pitcher's forearm and you set it so the squeaker is where the brush contact should happen. Then, when the pitcher goes into release, she tries to get it to squeak, like this. If she makes it happen, she got brush. If there's no sound, she knows immediately and can make a correction.
Wow, cool. So she gets immediate audible as well as tactile feedback.
Oh, there you go again, showing off with those big and technical words again. But yeah, she can feel it and hear it.
Does it really work?
You bet it does. I use it with my students all the time, and it helps them learn how to get brush contact pretty quickly if they practice with it.
Sounds neat. Where can I get one?
Oh, it's easy, Ken. Just email support@pitchsqueak.com, and Jason, the inventor of it, and a Polygirl certified pitching coach himself, will ask you how many you want and send them right out.
I'll do that today. Thanks, Jay. What's that address again?
Oh, you bet, Ken. It's support@pitchsqueak.com. One more time for those of you who are listening, support@pitchsqueak.com. And don't forget to mention in the email that you heard about it right here on From the Coach's Mouth podcast, and you'll receive 10% off.
Play ball.
Dee, I want to ask you a question because a lot of things have changed since you've coached. And when you talk about now developing pitchers, we hear all of these crazy, all this stuff, technology, right? And I'm on board with that. But how did you guys go or approach developing pitchers when you didn't have those resources and technologies that we have today? Was it just more bullpen focused? Was it, we're going to be more specific on spins? I always say too, some of the best teaching tools, and Ken and I have talked about this all the time, is put the electrical tape on a softball. Like that's going to give you some of the best spin readings you're ever going to see. You don't need a fancy machine to tell you those things, right? So like, how did you guys go about that back in the day when you didn't have resources like Rapsodo and Pitch Logic and all that stuff?
Actually, I think the only thing we had that plugged in at all was videotape. We did have that ability to, but that's after the fact thing. It's not.
And that was
instant.
At that time. It was a giant camera with a recorder strapped over your shoulder.
Yeah, or it was on a tripod. Behind either the pitcher or the catcher. You had to trust your catcher if you were going to put your camera behind him because one bad pitch and now we don't have a camera for the rest of the year. But so you put it behind the pitcher, so then you don't quite see as much because when she throws this pitch, she ends over here. Now in front of the ball, you don't even see it, that kind of thing. So we did have that. That was helpful. We threw a lot to pitching targets. Again, we had limited space for practices. We practiced. You got to remember we started playing in February, late February, early March. So all our practices were on a gym floor, which doesn't quite give you the same hops as either the outfield grass or the infield dirt. So we had 2 batting cages, but that's it. So out of those 2 cages, you had to find time for your pitchers to throw for their pitching practice. You had to have time for your batters to hit off of tees, off of pitching machines, off of pitchers. So, it was...
and you couldn't exactly go onto Amazon and buy a pitching mat either.
That's right. We didn't. That's exactly right. We actually took the time to tape a slab of rubber to the floor every day for practice. It just is so different now to have the instant feedback. I think some people thrive in that and some people don't. Some people, too much information is just that. It's too much information. I can't, process all that in the middle of it. But I think it's a tremendous help after the fact. For you to, after a practice, to be able to go back and look at something, or after you've worked on a particular pitch you're working on and you've been trying to spin, to be able to look and say, hey, it really is spinning in the direction that I'm trying together. I'm getting the revolutions that I was looking at, where before it was the catcher saying, "Good job." That was it. You got it. Now do that again. So it is definitely different. That kid probably somewhere in between, not having as little as we had, and then especially on the youth and high school level, of trying to do what some of the bigger college programs have. That's too much.
Yeah.
Too much info. And I think being in between there is probably the safest spot for most of us to be, so that you do still rely on what you see, what your eyes tell you, what you feel, and not just what the readings are on a post-activity report of what you did.
You've seen a lot, both as a coach and as an administrator. How do you think the mindset of athletes has changed over the years?
Well, I hope they still play because they love the game. They love the challenges of the game. They love the team part of the game, the exhilaration of accomplishing something individually and collectively all at the same time. So I really do hope that we don't do things to take that away, because I do think that's the best of all worlds. Now, I do understand that some people play because that's their ticket to college. Mm-hmm. Certainly that, financially, that's a big deal for some of them. It's their ticket away from having to work, because their parents say after school, if you're not going to play sports, then get a job. Hopefully, most of them will have decades to get a job.
Yeah.
And to learn what you learn from that experience. But for some, to have to do that in high school, if they don't play a sport, that's reason enough to play the sport, is to avoid, the alternative. Or if you're not going to play a sport, then come home and take care of your little brother and sister. It's like, that's not what I want to do. So, I'll play. So it becomes a distraction. But for some, I think that forces them into that decision. But then hopefully most of them learn to love it. That, wow, I'm really glad I did that. I'm really glad I was a part of that team. I'm really glad I got to know my two best friends that I never would have met in any other, because I go to a different school, or my school's too big, I never would have met them. But now they're my two best friends. And softball brought me to that. And so, I hope they find some redeeming factor if what actually got them to the table was something negative of trying to avoid the alternative. So maybe something that, and for some of them, I think it's a great bonding experience for families, because when you come home, hopefully when you come home from school, every once in a while, somebody at the dinner table asks you how your day was, or, what you learned today. And hopefully conversation can lead to softball too. How was practice today? How was your game? Hey, I went to the game. You guys were great today. I noticed you did this, or whatever. So maybe it gives them something to talk about instead of looking at their phone and then deciding what happened on TikTok to discuss at the family gathering, whatever that might look like. So I think, I'd like to think that everybody does it for the love of the game, but reality is a lot of people have different reasons. So I hope their mindset is that this game helped me in some way when they look back.
So what do you think you've been to all these Women's College World Series, and you're working, you're in the rules and all that wonderful stuff. It's amazing. But what do you think these athletes do better today than past generations?
Well, certainly all their opportunities have led to some extra experiences for them, at the college level. And actually there's quite a bit of disparity between, the top 10 schools in Division I and the bottom 10 schools in Division III of what, they're able to provide for their student athletes. But,
your results may vary.
Yeah. Well, and their resources, are good. Very, I know some of my players talk about, especially early on in my career, about, the opportunity to go somewhere they'd never been before. We got in a van and we drove all night to Florida to play. And it's like, never been to Florida. We got to go to Disney World, because at that time you could actually afford to take a team to Disney World and spend an afternoon there. And that's a life experience for them. And I think that still happens I hope it still happens in lots of places. You get a chance to give them things they never had before. I think the ancillary things, weight training, has come a long way since we talk about nutrition now. I'm sure some coaches would cringe if they knew what we fed our kids in my day, because it was get in the van and drive and play, get in the van and come home. So yes, it was peanut butter and jelly sandwiches, and that was dinner. And now they would, your nutritionist would, have a heart attack at that.
Yes, they would.
To say you're doing what? So the role of nutrition helps them be better. I think knowing about rest. People do vision training now, to help, especially hitters, pick up spins of balls and stuff. I think things that, we really didn't have time to delve into, didn't have the resources, maybe didn't have the coaching time to do them. I think that's changed a lot. So I think that this generation of players compared to mine have lots of other opportunities, but the end result is you still need to pitch the ball, throw the ball, catch the ball, hit the ball. That really hasn't changed.
Yeah.
So I want to ask you, I want to follow this up too now, because I was just about to say that as much as it's gotten all the technology and these opportunities, Ken and I talk about this all the time, Dee, is we feel that the softball IQ has gone down though, right? Because you talked with your players when you were first at Northern, you were just there and you were learning from them. And now it seems like all these coaches, at least in the travel aspect, are just, they're creating robots, in my opinion, right? The coaches are telling them exactly what to do. You have a first and third situation. Everybody runs down to the third base coach to get the play. It's like we as players, you got to learn and grow and to develop sometimes without somebody having to tell you what to do, so that when those opportunities come up again, that you just do it and you react instead of just being a robot who has to get permission from a coach. So, I feel like I was going to ask you, where do you think this generation falls short? And I think you kind of nailed it right there. You still got to hit the ball. You still got to feel it. You still got to throw a pitch it. Right. So how do you feel about, I want to ask you, do you feel like this generation has kind of been, their hands have been held a little bit more than when you were coming up and coaching?
I think, yes, I think so. I think that maybe we all look at, well, they have all these resources. Why wouldn't they be better? But that's the thing about sport. It was never meant to be played by robots, because robots can do the same physical function over and over consistently over time better than any of us ever will. So if you're looking for perfection in any sport, then get a robot, not a person, because they'll be able to replicate the skill that is needed all of the time. So I guess, for anybody who's worried about right now, the way the world is, and people worried about, is my job, if I'm studying for a career, is that career even going to exist? Or is a robot going to take it over? Robots aren't going to take over sports. So let's not be them. Let's not try to be them. Mm-hmm. So let's be us. And us is, part of that is thinking through what's the best. This kid at bat bunted 2 times, slapped the ball and ran. So I know she's really quick. I know that's what she likes to do. So I might cheat in a step on the infield because I think that's what she's going to do. I don't need my coach to tell me to do that. I need to do that. And then if I don't, then I need the coach to say after the half inning, it's like, okay, well, when she came up, what did you think? Did you remember that she's the fastest kid on the team and likely to drop the ball and run? And then if she says, no, that never occurred to me, it's like, okay, well, next time, think about, maybe add that. And if she says, well, I thought about it, but then I didn't think she would do it this time. It's like, okay, fair enough. I understand why you didn't move in. It didn't work out.
Yeah.
But that's okay, because her process was what I wanted to be. I wanted her to think that for herself. And she did. It just didn't pan out.
Yeah,
or the pitcher threw the ball in the wrong place and the kid smacked it, whatever it was.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say is I like that with pitchers when they tell me that, their coach called a pitch and they were shaking it off. And, the reason was because the last time you had me throw that pitch to this kid, she hit a home run off of me. And I'm not going to make that mistake again. Don't know what game you're watching, coach, but she took me downtown.
Right. Well, and all of us look at, the situation different. To your exact point is like, well, I called that pitch because that's your best pitch. So I was thinking you should throw your best to try and beat her. You were thinking when I threw that pitch, she beat the crap out of it.
Yeah.
So, we both were seeing the same opportunity, just coming up with different solutions to it.
Yeah. Well, and I think that the thing too is that, when you were talking about robots, yes, robots are going to be very reliable. They're going to do the same thing over and over again, but they're not going to do the extraordinary. A robot would evaluate the situation and isn't going to dive for that ball because, there's only a 30% chance I will catch it. And if the ball gets behind me, this situation is going to happen. And so blah, 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 blah. It goes through all the logic, whereas that player is going to go, we got to have that. If it gets behind me, it's not going to make that much difference. But if I can catch the ball, it's going to make a huge difference. That's
a great point. That robots are consistent, but never extraordinary. They're never horrible, never extraordinary. That's a great analogy. I like that.
And I think that's what makes sports fun to watch is, it's things happening that you wouldn't expect to see happening.
So Dee, I want to ask you a question. You've been deeply involved in the NCAA rules. What are some rule changes that had the biggest impact that you feel that have had the biggest impact on the game?
Wow. That's really, that's really hard to say. I would say, well, certainly the first thing would be having our own rule book. When I played, everybody played with, at the time, Amateur Softball Association rules. Everybody around here, some people in the South played with a different association, but most of us played. So if you played, the concept was you played youth ball, you played high school, you played college, you played seniors. It was all the same set of rules, so that made life easy. But the reality is that the skill level in those games are different games because of what the players can do. So, the first thing would probably be just getting our own rule book. We started with, ASA was very gracious in allowing us to have one page added to their rule book for college for years. And then finally, the NCAA decided to write its own rule book. I was the secretary rules editor for that very first committee of 8 people who wrote the first book and then have annually improved it. So making it, I had an umpire tell me when he found out we were going to write a new rule book, he said, well, why do you have a committee for that? And I said, because, different points of view and we want to do things. And he said, but really all you have to do is to take the ASA rule book and change all the he's to she's and you're done. And it's like, well, that wasn't really the goal.
Yeah.
That is true, that, we could do that because it was written from the male point of view, but it was more about tailoring the game to what college players can do. And so yeah, he thought that was kind of crazy to have even a book. But that's the biggest thing, because that committee still can tailor the game and make improvements to the game that don't belong in youth or high school, and letting each of us, and high school has their own rule book now too, so allowing each of us to better tailor to the people that we serve, I think it is huge. I think for all of us, going from 9 players to a designated hitter to a DP flex that's been a really good improvement. Mm-hmm. I think the designated player created a place for a player who was very good at hitting, but
a liability in the
you'd
field.
want on the field, a liability on the field. Good word. DP flex, even better, because we were able to get more people who are specializing into the game or introduced to the game. You might have a player who just hasn't been exposed to softball very much, and it's like, you know what? There's so much going on in your brain, defense, offense, all that stuff. It's like, just for these 2 weeks, you're going to be the flex. You're going to be playing defense, and I just want you to don't worry about your hitting. Just learn the game, because I think you can be great at it, and then we'll get you time at bat, later on. But let's just do this. Somebody coming off an injury, again, same thing. You can limit them to either one position or the other and not be forced to leave them on the bench until they can do everything. So I think that opportunity, I think that's made a big difference for us. A lot of people thought adding the second base at first base was going to change the game in college. I don't think it has. I think it was a good addition. I think it prevents collisions that were unnecessary. So anytime you can do that, I think that, that's a good thing because of the high traffic and the speed of our game. So many close plays compared to like baseball where people are usually out by 2 steps. Ours are out by half a step. So I think that was and everybody thought that was going to completely change the game. It's like, I don't think it will. I think it was good. We've changed pitching distances over the years from 40 to 40, 46, 43. I think 43 is a good number. I think it allowed us to put some more offense in the game. 40 feet, there weren't a lot of opportunities for scoring runs. That is good. So I think that was a really good change. And people think of it as a pitching change because that's who had to adjust the most. But it really brought offense into our game.
Yes,
and I think that's huge.
Yeah. Well, and again, people say, but we like those low scoring games. It's like, yeah, but it's not TV friendly. And you look at how the game has grown. I mean, at the end of the day, people like to see balls put in play. They like to see those defensive plays. They like to see the home runs. They like to see all that stuff. You put more balls in play, more people are interested, and more money comes into the game, and you can make the improvements.
Yeah, I remember early on in my career up here at Northern, it's like, you score a run in the 3rd inning and you're coasting because the other team's not going to score a run, And so it was just a whole different thing. And now you score a run in the 3rd and it's like, okay, well, that's not enough.
Yep.
Or if you're on the other side, if you're on the 0 side, it's like, no problem. We're going to get 2 in the next inning, so we're not out of the game. But, I just especially remember, you're down 1-0 and maybe the bottom of your order is up in the 7th inning. It's like this game was over.
Yeah. Bus drivers warming up the bus.
Yeah, exactly. We're getting out the peanut butter and jelly sandwiches because we're about to head on the road. Yeah. So now it's kind of like it's never over until it's over. Now, I won't say never anymore because I just saw a score this weekend in a Division I game that was 23-0, which was ridiculously out of realm. So there are still those, that exist. But now you can have a really good 1-0 game with a surprisingly lot of plays.
Yes.
They just didn't turn into runs.
Right.
But maybe you had base runners all the time or balls in play at least all the time that somebody makes a great snag on or whatever.
Yeah, there was hope.
Yeah. And then you have other games that maybe are a little out of hand of 5-0, but I think that team 5-0 still thinks maybe we can do it, And if we got 2 or 3 innings, maybe all we need is 1 or 2 an inning. Yeah, we can do that.
Yep.
So we're not out of it. So
one thing that I think people don't realize how amusing reading the rule book can be. Everybody thinks it's a dry document. But if you look in there, there's a lot of crazy rules. And my thought has always been, for every crazy rule, it came about because some coach tried to game the system. My favorite one is there's actually a rule that says after an offensive conference, all base runners must return to the base they were on before the conference. I would think that's implied. I would think that was a normal thing, but clearly somebody called an offensive conference, got his turtle behind his rabbit instead of in front.
Switch runners.
Yep. And they went in and somebody protested and said, well, there's nothing that says you can't do it.
Right.
So do you remember anything like that it came across where you just shook your head, kind of laughed and went, yeah, we got to put a rule in?
That happened all the time when I was sitting in that chair because I would get the calls from the field or after the game about this happened and there's not a rule against it. And how can it's like, and actually the place that you probably find those really interesting, quirky kind of things are now in the casebook. We started with just the rules and then we had to do just what you said, put some extra things in there. And so under my tenure, we added they're called approved rulings, but they're story problems, literally. Of, if this and this and this happens, then here's the correct application, and we put that in the book. So our rule book went from like 50 pages to 150 pages in a heartbeat. After I left, being the Secretary of Rules editor, the new person who's the Secretary of Rules editor and the staffer decided, what, our rule book is 4 times the size of baseball. And so we need to probably cut that back because people aren't paying enough attention. When do I have time to read a 300-page book? So I'm not going to read it at all. So I think they did the right thing in cutting it back to here are the essentials. And then they now produce something called the case book, which is posted on the website. It's free. It's, it's not going to cost you anything but it has all of those situations, all of those crazy plays of if this and this and this happened, then here's the correct application of the rule. So the casebook now has, so that's kind of fun when I have a group of coaches at the convention or whatever, and they say, let's talk about crazy plays or whatever. It's like, I just grab the casebook and just flip it open and say, okay, well, here's the play. Now what should the outcome be for that? It's also a huge help for umpires, and God bless umpires. They have so much to do, especially when they umpire different levels of games where the rules are different, or in my case, people who umpire Division I softball don't usually do any youth ball or high school, but they do Division III once in a while, or whatever. And it's like, yeah, the game is a little different at that level too, and giving them a place to write in and say, I had this play and this is what I did. What do you think of it? And then if it's something that might happen again, then we'll put it in the casebook and people can go read about it. But yeah, it does. Softball is unique in that way. You guys could go to the field and been at the field for decades too, and you'll see a play that you've never seen before and never heard of before. That happens in baseball and softball, but you never hear about that happening in a basketball game or in a soccer game. If you are a soccer mom or dad and you go to the soccer field for 2 years, you've pretty much seen everything you're going to see, on the field.
Yep.
That is not true in baseball and softball. And I don't know why that is, but people will say, I have been to this game for decades and never seen that happen. And there it is.
Yep.
So it is kind of, I don't know why that is. I don't know any other sport that's like that.
Yeah. No, I agree.
Maybe you guys do.
So you're pretty heavily involved in the NCAA tournament still. What are some of your responsibilities? If somebody goes out, especially like to the Women's College World Series, Dee's going to be hanging around. What's she doing out there?
No, that's the easy part of my job, because my only responsibility is being the equipment consultant. So my responsibility used to be sitting there watching the games and then either listening in my ear or having the ESPN person come run over and say, what just happened? Or how did they do that? Or how do we explain it or whatever? And I don't have to do that anymore. So it used to be a very tense time because I was always worried about, what was going to come up next? What do I need to be ready to answer? And now it's really easy because my only responsibility is doing bat testing every bat every day. Every day they play, not practice days, every day they play. So then when I get to go to the series, I pretty much sit back and enjoy the game again, which is fun. I sit with the committee members, the championship committee members, not people directly involved in the rules, but championship guys who are putting it on, umpires, the umpire staff, the umpires who are not on the game sit with me in my row. And so we get to sit and enjoy the game. So it's really nice. And then besides that, in Oklahoma City, the other thing I do is spend time in my hotel room entering data, because we track all 3 divisions from regionals on. We track bat testing for every team. Again, we do every team every day. So we keep track of the bats that they use by school, the manufacturers, the model numbers, all of that stuff. So I enter all that data and then work with the manufacturers about at the highest level of their games. A lot of people want to know what are the Division III best players swinging, which ones are not passing, what's being removed from the game. If it's being removed from the game, why? Is it that this particular model has a rattle to it, so umpires keep taking it out? Well, that's hard on student athletes. When you get to key moments when it's, win or go home, the last thing I want you to do is take my trusted bat out of my hand. So how can we do that, better? So from 48 and 24, 70 sites, 75 sites, I've got data to enter of. So I try to get all that done because 2 weeks after the World Series is usually the committee meetings. So the rules committee meets and I have presentations to them. Then immediately after them, I start heading back to the manufacturers, to the engineers. There's kind of two sets of manufacturers. I have the guys who are the reps, but then I have most of the major companies. I work with the engineers. They want to know certain things about their bats. They want to know how much are they being used. They want to know what's being taken out of the games for connection issues or breakage. 2 years ago, we had just a rash of breaks in games, like 42 bats breaking in 2 or more pieces during a game. That's crazy high when you have pieces of metal flying around to either the edge infielders or pitcher, or the catcher and the umpire actually get hit with flying shrapnel too. And it's like that. I mean, people think, oh, that's not a big deal when you think of the tens of thousands of games being played. 42, that's a big deal. Well, when you're one of the 42 and you get hit with a bat, it matters.
Or a shard.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So what led to that? We went from like 10 or 15 to 42 for 2 years in a row. Now we're back down. Well, we still have more to go, but I'm going to say the last, I think 23 maybe, so half. So that's good. Going back to manufacturers, they have taken some things off the market out of the college game. They have redesigned things so that it might be, it was the 25 edition. We added 2 more layers of carbon fiber, so now it's a little stiffer. 26 edition, same name, same model. Well, the model number will change because it'll have 26 in it somewhere, but same bat construction, just solved the problem from getting worse. So then there's those meetings and got to be ready for them. And then, it is a cycle. We have, NCAA has an approved bat list. So we don't allow all the bats that the rest of you allow into your game because they're not appropriate. Manufacturers appreciate that because they have to add more weight, more length, more strength to the bats in our game. You don't need to do that. You don't need to put $500 of technology into a bat for a 10-year-old. You just don't. Mm-hmm. So by keeping that 10-year-old's bat off of our list, it allows them to tailor better their product for the other parts of the game and tailor just specific ones for us. So we post a list in August. So that happens, putting that together, asking them, the manufacturers, to send their data for what they want to add. It's easy to delete, and they do that. Most manufacturers delete them after 5 or 6 years. But so summer does that, and then they get right into breaking in bats again in the fall and start all over again.
Awesome. That's busy. So Dee, we're a little over an hour. We promised you to be just an hour, so we don't want to keep you in longer. We just have a couple more questions.
Yeah, hard to believe an hour's gone by already. This has been fast.
I know, this is awesome. So I'm going to just switch a little bit now. I want to know what it was like for you transitioning from a coach to administrator. Like, what was that biggest adjustment when you made that transition from coach to administrator? And then Ken might have one more question for you.
Okay. You know what? That was kind of easy for me because I wanted to help students enjoy their college experience, grow up as human beings to do whatever it is that they want to do and get those skills to do it. So I had a team of maybe 20 women that I was able to do that with. And when my sport administrator became the athletic director, who's somebody that I really respect and love her style of leadership. She asked if she got the AD job, would I leave coaching to be the assistant, take her place and be her assistant. And instead of coaching my 20 women, I got a chance to coach coaches who then each had a chance to coach 10 to 30 students at the university. So it was a really easy decision for me. I'd already gone from coaching a sport of softball, which I knew nothing about, to coaching a sport of volleyball and basketball, which I knew nothing about, but just taking coaching skills and then being able to concentrate on the softball side of it for a lot of times. But then it's like, you know what? I could coach coaches, and then they could go and I can have as big an impact on people leaving this university by being an administrator. So that's what I did. And my coaches probably threw their hands up because to start with, thinking I was meddling a lot. But you know what? I did stuff with them like I did with my teams. We had monthly meetings over lunch. Food is always a good thing to get people to come over lunch. And you know what? Your job, Ken, next meeting is, I want you to take something that you do with your team that you think really helps them develop team culture. And I want you to teach us next Wednesday at lunch what you did and how we can apply that. And so I had these amazing meetings with, the basketball coach saying this. I said, and okay, Ken, when you do it, keep in mind, you might have different resources, because the basketball coach has different resources than the tennis coach does, but they can take away. So help them with that. Say, okay, well, we had all this. If you don't have all this, you can still accomplish the same thing by doing it this way. And so that was the best part of my job. It was coaching them. And then they would come in my office and tell me how it went. We tried this idea and, it went great, or here's my problem or whatever. And the other thing about that, and I mentioned, having a meal, that's always a good thing, because coaches are busy. And so if you can feed them and teach them at the same time, that's a good thing. The other thing I did right away, first day on the job, was as soon as you walk in my door, there's a basket of candy. But you can't take something out of the candy unless you have something to say. So, you know what? They might have stood in the hall and figure out something to say, make it up. I don't know. I'm hoping maybe that happened once or twice, but not often. But they would come in, and I got to know them like I got to know my players. So that helped me get through that hard time of missing my players too much, missing being a part of their lives, because I got this other group of people, and then I got to know their players, because they would come in and talk about, I'm having trouble with this, motivating this kid, I can't figure her out, whatever. And it's like, okay, so I can sit and practice and watch that kid, and maybe I can help by when she's walking off, walking off to go to the locker room, and say, hey, that's good practice today. I watched a little of it. You're really getting the hang of it, and it's like, then maybe they feel good about somebody noticed them. So it was really easy transition for me.
It sounds like you've got a great book there. You just said lessons I learned from other coaches.
Lessons I learned from other coaches. And have a candy basket.
Yep.
That's the key.
So I have one more question for you. And is there anything going on in softball right now that you strongly disagree with?
I guess at the youth level, I am not a big fan of some of these tournaments, and I understand that you have to make money to have tournaments sometimes and stuff. But some of the associations with facilities or hotel chains or whatever, where, we're getting in as many teams as we can, and your team plays at 8:00 in the morning and 9:00 at night, and your kids are 10 years old. It's like, that was never meant to be. That's not ideal learning time.
Agree.
For many of us. And so I guess if I was living in that world, I would not be a fan of that. I would much rather go to a place where maybe there's only 6 teams, but we all play between 10 in the morning, and maybe the last game starts at 6 at night, maybe 7. But we're not putting people on the field starting at 9:00. And in order to do that, okay, we're going to have an hour and a half time limit. The game, softball, was not meant to be played like that. The strategy is different.
Yes.
Actually, if you're going to play by time. And so on the youth level, that's something, if I could change that, if I could change one thing, that would probably be the kids' experience, making sure that it's a good experience. On the college level, if I could change anything, it would be the craziness now of players. We've kind of lost the idea of student and student athlete. I grew up under the student first, and athlete was opportunity to do other things, but it was student first. So you came to get a degree. So, you come, and in your 5 years you played for somehow in there, maybe a redshirt year, maybe a medical year, whatever. But, it was a brief period of your life to come in and get an education that's going to serve you the rest of your life. Whether it's a professional thing or just learning how to live and then going out and doing anything at all that does or doesn't require a college degree, just being a student. And then when you go to that school and you join that team, you join that group, that you commit to it. I think we are teaching kids now that if you go and you don't get exactly what you want, then quit on them and go somewhere else. And there's a time for that when really a situation is bad for a player and they need to go. But I cannot imagine the time when a 19-year-old needs to quit 4 teams and play on their 5th team in college in their sport.
Yes.
That just doesn't make sense to me, that we allow that to be a learning experience of, just if you don't have exactly what you want or don't get enough money or playing time, whatever it is, just quit on the people that you committed to being part of and move on. And everybody makes a mistake once in a while. Yeah, I get that. You thought maybe you went to school because you liked this coach and the coach left. So now there's a different philosophy. Maybe you thought it was going to be one way and it's a different. So, okay, pack up and go somewhere else, but then stay and get your degree and learn what you can. And it may not be everything you need, but you need to give everything you have to that group and not turn and walk away. So
for sure. Learn better decision.
And I have no solution to it, which is the worst thing ever. When people tell me what's your problem, I always ask, what's the solution? I got none.
Yeah.
I have no idea what the solution is. I just know that I don't like it. I don't like the youth kids playing the way they have to play sometimes at tournaments. And I'm sure that over time, that's probably an expense deal too for parents. Softball's not a cheap sport to play. It's hard in the inner city to do that because equipment is expensive and travel time, is an issue. So,
and you need a fair amount of space.
Yeah. A dedicated space.
Yeah.
If you have a YMCA or a rec center or whatever, a gym floor, you could play a whole bunch of things on it.
Yep.
You got a softball field, you got one thing you can play on. And if you're in the north, you can only play on it half of the year.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because the other half of the year it's under snow.
Yep.
So that's, So I guess that would be, I hate to end on that. What do I hate about it?
All right. All right. Well, then here, I've got one.
But I'll just say that would be
We got one more for you then. We'll give you one more then. Here you go. Go ahead.
Okay. Yeah. So this is a fun one. Do you have any hidden talents or things that someone would be surprised to learn about you?
Oh my gosh. A hidden talent.
Yeah.
I don't think I do have a hidden talent. And if you were to ask my former players and stuff, it's like, what I think they would probably say what surprised them most was how hardworking I am, but yet I still want to have fun. I think life's too short to
For sure.
To not like what you do. There's certainly times when you don't like parts of what you have to do, parts of your job. But you know what? When you have those times, then that makes you appreciate the ones that you do like.
Yep.
Like if you hate to do paperwork, it's like, okay, but when you get the paperwork done, you get to then go out to practice and play with the girls. It's like, okay, so that makes me look forward to playing with the girls more and makes me enjoy them more because I get to get rid of this. So I think that's probably what they would say. It's like, that's kind of a overriding thing for me.
Awesome.
Great.
And I can juggle.
Oh, there you go.
See? There we go. We were waiting for that one. Here we go.
I made my pitchers learn how to juggle.
Nice.
All right. Yeah.
We did. We learned how to juggle. You know what? Because it was just kind of a, hey, I'm going to ask you to learn new spins, new things. So I want you to learn how to learn. And we're going to all suck at it to start with. But we're going to do it together.
There you go.
So, yeah, those, when I was at Northern, I made my pitchers learn how to juggle.
That's awesome. Could put on your own little circus.
Yeah. They might have thought it was a circus. I don't know. Yikes.
Well, Dee, thank you so much for giving us all this time and telling these great stories. We really enjoyed it.
Oh, I enjoyed it too. I hope I see you guys up the road here. Maybe maybe I have to come out and chase down Coach Campbell and see what's going on. See if you're at the ballpark.
Come on out for a lesson. That'd be great.
Yeah.
Then we could stay for an hour after that and just hang out and talk softball. I'd love that. You're welcome at any time to come to one of Macy's lessons or any of that. So again, thanks to Katie and Chris for putting us in contact with you. This has been, Ken and I are so grateful and thankful for your time today. But you are welcome anytime. I'd love to sit down and pick your brain some more on many, many, many other things and questions I have. So.
And then you and I could always reminisce about eating beef sandwiches at Tom and Jerry's.
Oh, yeah. Hey, did you know that Tom and Jerry's burnt to the ground?
Really? Oh, that's a shame.
Yeah.
See,
it did. It burnt to the ground not too long ago, and there was a different restaurant in town that had been closed for a while. So they moved in to there temporarily, and they just broke ground this last Saturday to rebuild on their old site.
Oh, wow.
So people in town, we had a fundraiser. You could buy Tom and Jerry T-shirts, try and support them. And
nice. So for people who didn't go to Northern, Tom and Jerry's was a little like hot dog stand that was just outside of the bar area. So you'd go out and you'd have yourself a good time all night on a Friday night or a Saturday night. And then as you're heading back toward the dorms or toward the apartments and stuff, you'd stop Tom and Jerry's, get a little food in you so you didn't have such a hangover the next morning. And and what I remember most about it was back in those days when I was going to school there, I could stop off, have 2 beef sandwiches, a large thing of fries, a large Coke, and wake up the next day and I haven't gained a pound. Now I think about Tom and Jerry's and I put on 5 pounds. So,
well, maybe you need to, when they open up, I'll let you know, and maybe you need to come on out because Diane is still the owner of Tom and Jerry's. So maybe you need to come out here and we'll meet at Tom and Jerry's.
Sounds good.
Awesome.
All right. It's a deal.
Jay, do you want to say anything about
guys.
T-shirts? Thank you, Dee.
Yeah, real quick. Just a reminder that if you share the podcast, you like it on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, you share it out, Ken and I will be happy to send you out a T-shirt. Just show us and send us a message that you sent the podcast out and you shared it out to others. This would be a great episode to share it out. We have somebody like Dee on here today who has just a ton of knowledge and a lot to share with coaches. So click follow on Apple Podcasts or Spotify or YouTube and share out an episode, and Ken and I will happily send you out a T-shirt. So thanks everybody for listening. We appreciate it. And share it out.
All right. Well, that's it for us this week. Thanks to all of you for listening and the kind words you've been sharing with us. If you like what you're hearing, please remember to give us a like, leave a comment, and share this podcast on your social media channels, like Jay said, and you can get a T-shirt. Make sure you never miss an episode by following us on your favorite podcast platform. And if you're so inclined, you can also leave us a great review on Apple Podcasts to help more people find us. On behalf of the From the Coach's Mouth podcast, have a great rest of your week and weekend.